Here's why discipline is not what you think it is. Now, so many people have this idea of discipline, which is I need to be like a David Goggins or a Navy SEAL type, or I need to be an extreme strict Spartan type individual who goes after his goals with relentless passion and courage and goes all out. And I think that it's fair to say that most people watching this video probably think like that when it comes to discipline. And to be honest with you, I used to think about that. I used to think this way when it comes to discipline too. I used to think that I needed to really G myself up and really get psychologically on board with my goals and really go after it and wake up every day. Today is going to be the day. And I thought that kind of energy and motivation and drive would get me over the line. But what I realized is that this type of drive and this type of motivation, this fire, is very fleeting. It's kind of like, and it burns out very, very quickly, right? If you've ever driven an American muscle car, you know how quickly it goes through gasoline. And so this is what it's like when you're trying to fuel your goals and use discipline in this kind of way. It burns you out very, very quickly because you can't sustain that level of output or that level of G'ing yourself up, should we say. And so if you think about discipline in this way, and you always have notion of discipline, you'll struggle to be a disciplined individual because you think that being disciplined in general involves this all-encompassing, all-out effort, which it doesn't. The reality of being disciplined is doing the right things and doing them consistently. You don't necessarily have to have this all-out mindset that I'm going to go for it and today is the day. If you want to see how that works in practice, just look at how everyone approaches their health and fitness goals on January the 1st. This is how most people approach their health and fitness goals, and they go out gung-ho, and by the end of January, they're completely burnt out. Why? Because they've tried to maintain this energy and tried to do a million things at once, and then they crash and burn inevitably and unfortunately by the end of January, or sometimes by the middle of February if they've really tried to keep it up, right? And so, as we've discussed, this is not a sustainable way to approach discipline. And really, the most sustainable way to approach discipline is from the root of it. And the root of it is in your thinking, in your mind. So instead of disciplining tasks, which is what most people are trying to do, disciplining how they eat, disciplining their gym routine, disciplining all of these things, because we are conditioned from childhood to think in a very 3D Newtonian way. This is my world, and it's the result of what's going on outside of me. But the reality is that your world is a reflection of how you think. Your reality is a reflection of your consciousness. So if you want to improve anything in your life and have better results, you must change the way that you think. And this is especially true when it comes to discipline. You must start to discipline the way that you think. And when I say discipline the way that you think, I mean thinking and acting like an individual who is disciplined. I'll give you an example. I love giving examples from fitness because I think they illustrate the importance and how discipline works in practice. So I was at the gym a few days ago, and I told myself that I was going to do a warm-up on the treadmill for 10 to 15 minutes to begin with, and then I was going to do a cool down on the treadmill, like an incline walk for around 10 minutes afterwards. And at the start of the workout, I did around 8-9 minutes, and then I heard a voice in my mind say, oh, you know what, let's not do 15 minutes because 10 minutes is more than enough. You warmed up now, you've done 1,000 or so steps, that's fine. But I told myself that I'm going to do 15 minutes, and that's exactly what I'm going to do because I know that keeping my word to myself is the root of discipline. And I could see my mind coming up with all of these excuses. And so Bob Proctor says that discipline is the ability to give yourself a command and follow it. And in this instance, I was giving myself a command. I was making sure I was following it. But what happens is if you don't discipline your thinking and you're not aware of how you're thinking, you see these little insidious, subtle ways that your mind tries to trick you into getting out of the promises that you keep to yourself day after day after day. These micro commitments that seemingly are unimportant, these micro decisions that you make in a day-to-day basis where you let yourself off the hook. But if you let yourself off the hook for the small things like being on the treadmill, going to the gym like you said you would, etc., then that means that you're breaking the promises and breaking these commitments to yourself in the big things as well. How you are in one area of your life is how you are in the rest of your life, right? So if you want to be a more disciplined person, you have to start being much more aware of the way that you think, and specifically the promises that you're keeping or breaking to yourself. And then the next thing that I want to talk about when it comes to discipline and why it's so important is your attitude towards discipline. I would say that the vast majority of people have a very negative relationship or attitude toward discipline. They think it's something that's difficult, it's hard, something that they don't like doing. And if you think that discipline is something that you don't like doing or a series of behaviors that you just have to grit and bear and grind through in order to get the result, then you, my friend, are not going to enjoy any of the process, and it's going to be drudgery for you the entire time. Now, is that to say that doing things when you don't feel like it isn't necessary? Absolutely. You're still going to have to do things from time to time, even when you don't feel like it. That's the result of being a disciplined individual. But if you have a terrible attitude towards discipline, it's going to make your life hell and extremely difficult. Once again, we'll use the example of fitness. So I would say that most people have a negative relationship with discipline, specifically when it comes to the gym. They see going to the gym as something they don't enjoy, as something that's a chore, and it's difficult. And guess what it turns out to be for these people? A chore, difficult, and so on. Now, is that to say that you're going to love every single training session? No, of course not. But how you show up in those training sessions is going to be a direct reflection of your attitude and your relationship towards it. Now, you can either view it as something that's difficult and hard, and inevitably that's how it's going to be. Or we can view it as an opportunity to grow as an individual, improve your mindset, and keep those promises to yourself that you said that you're going to make. And so the final thing that I'll say about discipline is your self-image. So your self-image is a direct reflection of the way that you perceive yourself to be. It's your self-concept. It's how you think of yourself. Now, if you're struggling with being a disciplined individual, the likelihood is that you don't view yourself as a disciplined individual. You have this idea of yourself as not being disciplined. And I can say that anyone who achieves their goals in life or goes after what they want in life, they tend to be disciplined individuals specifically because they view themselves as disciplined individuals. So how do you become a disciplined individual if you don't already view yourself as one? And the simplest way to know if you view yourself as a disciplined individual is look at your results. Are you doing the things that you say that you're going to do? Are you keeping those promises to yourself? If you're not, if you're backing out of things and you're letting yourself off the hook, chances are you don't view yourself as a disciplined individual. And you know what? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I don't think it's very pragmatic or helpful for you to judge yourself and condemn yourself if you don't have a quality or trait that you want. I just see it as an opportunity to grow and develop those traits. Because if every time you see that a quality that you lack is an opportunity to beat yourself up and beat yourself over the head with a stick, you're not going to be a very happy person because you're always going to be on your case, right? So view this as an opportunity to grow and become a more disciplined individual. So how do we go about doing it? Well, James Clear says in his book, Atomic Habits, every action you take is a vote toward the person you wish to become. So if you want to be a more disciplined individual, you have to start behaving like a disciplined individual. But as the saying goes, Rome was not built in a day. So if you're not in the habit of eating properly, going to the gym, of following through on your outreach to potential clients, of creating content on social media every day, of reading 10 pages of a book, of going to bed early, then you need to start taking the action steps of that person and start behaving like that person. If you're not used to going to the gym though, start going to the gym 5 days a week. You want to develop the identity of the individual who goes to the gym. So start by going to the gym twice a week, for example, for 10 or 15 minutes at a time. You'll be surprised how good your workouts can be in such a short space of time, and stay consistent with that for 6 to 8 weeks. And then you start to develop the identity of someone who goes to the gym. All of a sudden, you're a gym goer rather than someone who lacks consistency and goes for 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Now, the way to develop discipline is to keep things simple, but our society abhors this idea of simplicity when it comes to discipline. But the way I see it is that life is already hard enough as it is. Why make it harder for yourself by putting so much on your plate and giving yourself an unrealistic standard to achieve, thereby lowering your self-image, lowering your self-esteem and the way that you see yourself? Why not make it easy for yourself to win? Get over this idea that it needs to be really hard and you need to put yourself under all this pressure and constraints in order to make something worthwhile. That's bullshit. The best thing and the logical, smart thing to do is to make it a low barrier to entry for something that you've struggled with, to develop the discipline and the identity of the individual who does those things, make it simple, and then you'll start to become more disciplined, and then you can add more on top of that. So if you start going to the gym twice a week, you can add another day on it. And if you feel like you need more, you probably don't, to be honest with you, then you can add more to that. The same goes for your bedtime. Let's say that you're in the habit of going to bed at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. and you feel like you lack discipline when it comes to going to bed on time. Then how can you go to bed maybe 20, 30 minutes earlier? And once you're consistent at doing that, then you can increase the time. And I find this is the simplest method to increase discipline and increase your confidence in yourself, is to start small and slowly, gradually increase it. But that takes time, it takes consistency, and it takes a little bit of effort. And we like to think that we need to do everything all at once, but that habit and that mindset is holding you back from being a more disciplined individual, and therefore, because discipline is the foundation of everything that you want to achieve in life, being more successful. So if you just take one thing away from this video, is that discipline is actually quite simple to apply if you focus on 1 to 2 things at a time, then you make the barrier to entry so low that it's almost impossible for you to execute and fail.